back on the field. Commanders go into their offseason with some pretty obvious needs, but there's one position that you think should be higher on people's list. What is it?
I feel like it's wide receiver, and in this offense in particular, where we're going to see them deploy 3 and 4 wide receiver looks more than the average team in the NFL, I think they need to improve not only the depth, but I think the talent at the top of the room. Terry McLaurin is the only sure thing you have right now at wide receiver, and depending on who you talk to, like in an ideal world, Terry's my Z, and I got a real number 1 on the opposite side of him.
I'm gonna say a real X, not a real number 1.
But I feel like I'm degrading Terry when I say that, but you get what I mean.
Yeah. For those that don't know, Z is your off-ball wide receiver, so he plays on the same side as the tight end.
Yes.
You get to play about a yard off the line of scrimmage, thus free releases. X, you're on the line of scrimmage. So traditionally, it's been your bigger-bodied receiver, although like a guy like Tyreek Hill plays X because he's so quick that it doesn't matter. Right, exactly. Terry has played X most of his career, obviously done pretty well, but there's a lot of folks, and Logan and I have talked about this on Take Command, that think Terry is probably better suited as a Z.
Especially last year, I don't know if it was because of the scheme or whatever, him and Jahan, it felt like struggled against press man looks. And Matt Harmon I don't know if you're familiar with Matt's work. He's like the wide receiver guru.
Yeah, he's been on the pod. Reception Perception.
Perception.
A fine Odyssey podcast.
Yes, it is. He put out some interesting numbers on Jahan Dotson a couple of weeks ago. And it kind of just, reemphasizes the point for me. Like, obviously, not a stellar sophomore campaign for Jahan. I think the people in that building, I personally believe he's got the capability to bounce back. But in reality, you want Jahan in the slot. If in an ideal world, I'm playing him in the slot. I know he played a lot outside at Penn State, but just for the reasons we named for Terry wanting to be the Z, if you can avoid and get free releases rather as much as you can, I think that's best for these guys based on what their skill set is.
I don't know that I agree with Jahan in the slot. And I was there earlier this season, but I was talking through it with Logan, which tends to be my filter of intelligence. And
Smart guy.
To say the least.
Smart dudes.
There is an urgency you have to play with in the slot that I don't think Jahan plays with. And maybe you could coach it up and just be like, hey, dude, we need you to win right now. But part of Jahan's problem last year was his timing of stuff was just not there. Yeah. It's like, I'm going to hop, skip, and I'm going to shake. And it looks real cute. Yeah. It looks real good on air and in training camp. Yeah. And it was killing it in training camp. And then all of a sudden you get in games, it's like, no, dude, we need you to win a half second faster. We don't have time for the triple stick at the top of your route. You got to win right now. And that becomes even more so in the slot where you're often the emergency safety valve.
Right.
And things happen. Around. Yeah. You got two-way releases. You got defenders from everywhere. You got to give a quarterback a clean read on stuff. And I don't know that the way he's played so far as a pro, nor did he show a lot at Penn State, that says, slot guy, even though he's got some of the physical traits that in your head would make you go slot guy.
I can agree with that. Bottom line is, though, I do think they need to add another wide receiver that's going to come in here and contribute. 36 and 40. If they walk away from this draft without selecting a wide receiver at 36 or 40, I'm going to lose my mind. Now, there's also this scenario that I was recently thinking of. Let's just say, and this is maybe unlikely, but it's projected to be 6-7 receivers going in round 1.
Yes.
Say you fall in love with a guy, Brian Thomas Jr., I think has the exact physical profile that this team could use.
Yes.
If he begins to slip, would you be against moving up back into round 1 to get a guy like that?
Yes, I would. For multiple reasons. One, I think looming over all of this discussion is eventually stuff has to work out. You've got to take picks, and this is kind of part of what I'm going to talk about with corner for the next month as well. You have to, at least for 2024, bank on the fact that Jahan Dotson is a former first-round pick is going to work out for you. And same thing with corner with Emmanuel Forbes. You have to operate under, that's one of my starters. He's a first-round pick. We can coach him better than he's been coached in the past. Unless, maybe you thought he was a third rounder coming out. You don't understand why he was.
Yeah, that's true.
And I guess if that's the case, then maybe you operate under a different premise. But by and large, you can't flip the whole roster. And we're talking about a guy who was a first-round pick 2 years ago. So I've got to operate under that. And that means that I'm going to plan on paying him in a couple of years a pretty decent chunk of change, even if he's not going to get Jamar Chase money or anything, even Terry McLaurin money.
Yeah.
That he is a long-term Washington Commander, right? And if that's the case, I don't have the money in that room. I've already spent enough financially in Terry, draft pick-wise in Jahan, that I don't think this team can afford to package multiple picks to go up and get a wide receiver. Not to say that that player in Brian Thomas Jr. is a good shout, couldn't be really effective, but like how much does that affect winning versus you tell me I keep 36 and 40 and I draft Darius Robinson and Patrick Paul, my starting edge and my starting left tackle of the future.
See, the only thing, and I know you're just using those two players as hypotheticals, I actually hate both of their fits here. Because I think Patrick is probably like not strong enough to come in and play right away.
Not strong enough.
The run game?
Maybe his play strength doesn't.
Play strength, sorry.
Because that dude is a like freakazoid of an athlete.
And this is, and I'll be completely honest with you, this is me.
He's raw.
Listening to other people that are smarter than me that give their evaluations of him. The one thing that they reference with Patrick Paul is like play strength and the ability to get movement and create movement in the run game. So that's why he would be a little bit of a.
But he's such a good athlete and he's so strong that and he's very poorly coached in college.
That's fair to say. And then for Darius Robinson is interesting because I think his body type is interesting. Like when you watch him or when you hear folks talk about him, a lot of the times they refer to him in his ability to have the inside-outside pass rush. Like he can rush from the 3-tech and he could be on the edge as well.
Yes.
In this defense in particular, do you think they value that trait more than maybe other defenses? And I'm genuinely asking.
I think versatility to create matchups. But the thing with him is he also is like, it's funny because Logan has identified him as like the guy who is Dan Quinn's prototypical Washington Commander. Because of his nasty streak, his play speed, his motor. Yeah. Like he's got all of that and he's got multi-positional pass rush ability where one of the big things they do, and obviously Parsons was the ultimate chess piece in Dallas, but they know how to create good matchups and get guys in good spaces to win as pass rushers. And because he can do that from multiple spots, he is an ideal fit, I think, here in Washington. So I would vehemently disagree with you on the fit for Robinson. And I would say for Paul, he doesn't really, like he's just a big old moldable piece of clay that's got incredible athletic upside, and you're banking on the fact that you can coach him up. But like the point being on the wide receiver side of it, like let's not get too bogged down in the players. Like wide receiver wise, there is also so many wide receivers in this draft of any given body type, whether you want to get a true quick twitch slot type of guy, whether you want to get a big power slot, an X, a Z, you want it, it's in this draft. And because of that, trading extra draft capital to move up to get someone who's not that much better than whatever you could get later, that to me is crazy.
I just think it all depends on your evaluation of the player, honestly. Like some folks are going to feel like Brian Thomas Jr. was
but like
what team receivers.
What team I mean, yeah, Brian Thomas Jr. is wide receiver 4 for most people in this draft. But, you know, behind Odunze, Harrison and Neighbors. So he's 4 behind them, and those 3 are wide receiver 1 in any draft that's not this year.
If you saw Daniel Jeremiah's latest top 50, I think he's got them 2, 3, and 4 talking about
Harrison,
like
they're
Neighbors.
So good. But the thing is, like, unless you are a wide receiver star away, and by the way, like true star, like Jamar Chase away, when does it work out that like drafting a wide receiver high and trading up like turns you into all of a sudden a juggernaut?
I hear you.
It's not solid team building strategy.
I just feel like if you identify a guy that you love, it's one of those things with me. And I used him as a specific example because he's the guy that I love, and that's probably going to slide a little bit depending on when the tackle run.
I don't know he's going to slide.
When the tackle run happens.
Maybe. But like I'm not giving up. The answer to your question, if I'm the GM, is no. I am not.
And I don't want to get caught up on that. There's other ways still, to me, to address wide receiver.
Look, I will tell you, if like Lad McConkey out of Georgia falls to them at 36, like we've taken him in a mock. Like I'm there. I'm 100% in on that. And that's the cool thing is like this receiver room, I think, is like there's a lot of room. Obviously, Zacchaeus is a nice piece to like add a little bit of a floor underneath. But if he can be wide receiver 4 instead of wide receiver 3, I feel even better. So I do want them.
I hope he's not wide receiver
3. But if he's 4, like that's a pretty good wide receiver 4, a vet who's got some production. Like I'm not mad about that. De'Ami Brown is an option to like score a couple touchdowns over the course of the year on a deep ball. And by the way, he's actually De'Ami's. It's funny because we think of him as like this deep threat. His best attribute is he's a dog in the run game. And so,
he blocks his face off.
Like, let Terry catch a blow on a run play and let De'Ami go out and block his face off and then get him back out the game and get Terry back in there. So, like, if all of a sudden your 5 receiver room is a pretty freaking good rookie, because there's a ton of them, Terry, Jahan, Zacchaeus, and De'Ami Brown, like, that's a pretty, like, it's not an earth-shattering top 5, depending on how good Terry is in this offense, but it's a pretty darn good one. But I agree with you that they need one more piece, and I would like it to be in those top 100 picks, because that guy can play serious minutes for you at receiver in year 1, considering the depth of position, or at that position in this draft.
Yeah, I think my scare with all of this is, we did this last offseason. We put a lot of stock and faith in Jahan Dotson, and he simply let us down. Is that who Jahan is?
Well, if he is, then you're gonna have to do something next year. But this is kind of the luxury of, at least in my opinion, not having a lot of expectations on you this year.
Well,
like, this is a bit of a mess around and find out year. Like, you need to find out if Emmanuel Forbes and Jahan Dotson can play.
Yeah.
And if they can't, then like you got to seriously evaluate them next offseason and their places on this team. In the short, nevertheless, the long term. The long term becomes easy, not here. The short term, you have to evaluate that. But this season, like, there's only so much you can do in one offseason.
Right.
And I would rather get the best building blocks that I can at these positions, which is going to involve using as many of these draft picks as possible. I would be okay moving up for a left tackle. Like, let's say Guyton or Mims or one of those guys falls in the 20s. Mm-hmm. You want to package 36 and 67 or whatever it is to get up into the mid-20s to draft one of those guys. That's fine, because that's a piece. Like, you don't have the piece right now. Terry's the piece. You already have the piece. That's not, and he's got enough time left that I'm not going like, oh, that's good roster building. That's doing the same dumb thing that they did the last 4 years, where they were like, oh, we have to spend a second-round pick on Fedarian Mathis in case Daron Payne leaves. And then they pay Daron Payne, and then they have just silly duplicate position nonsense.
And that frustrates me that the previous regime decided to make that move, because I feel like that influenced how much money they went out and spent at edge rusher this offseason. I know Dorrance has got a pretty healthy contract, and you're banking on him with an increased role being a guy. But the edge rusher thing's interesting. We were talking about it before the show. Right now, I feel like you got a quartet of guys, but you don't have
the stud.
You don't have the
stud.
stud.
But, like, that's the whole thing. Like, this is the good team building. The good team building is you put a floor underneath you in free agency that says, if we have to go out there tomorrow, we're going to be able to at least be competent NFL whatever. But our studs, our blue chippers, those guys come in the draft. When teams say we want to build through the draft, it's not we have to get every position in the draft and then we got a bunch of young kids out there running around like chickens with their head cut off. Right. It's we got a bunch of pros that can teach them how it's done, signed in free agency. And our studs, long-term, over time, blue chip, top-level talent is coming through the draft. And I think Adam Peters in his first offseason has done a magnificent job of setting them up to be able to do just that.
Real quick, you buy in the notion that after round 4 there's this massive drop-off in talent, and then how would that impact your draft strategy, GM Hoffman?
It would, and it already has, because that you think about the Sam Howell trade getting back into that top 100. That
I didn't even think about it from that line. Yeah.
I did. You should have listened to the show the day that they did the trade. I talked about it. I do buy it. I think, though, this is a situation where, like, beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
Right.
Just because there is a mass drop-off, if you have the right guys targeted, you can still find the gems. I mean, and we've talked about this with the NBA draft this year. It's a bad draft. But you know who else was a bad draft? The 2013 draft.
17.
Unless you were the Milwaukee Bucks, because you got that Antetokounmpo fella at 15. Although it didn't work last night.
Those Wizards, they're feisty.
Look at those Wizzies go. We'll talk to Dave Johnson, by the way. Did I just call them the Wizzies? I need to go home and take a nap. Dave Johnson joins us less than an hour from right now. Lynnell, his broadcasting is done for the day. When are you back again in front of a microphone?
Same time tomorrow, knucklehead.
You're back at 1 o'clock tomorrow with Rooster? That's Charles Barkley, but it's not actually Charles Barkley. It's kind of like Frank Caliendo or Danny's impersonation of Charles Barkley.
Yeah. But no, same time tomorrow.
You were with Russell?
1 to 4.
How'd you negotiate a double with him?
rumor has it the folks requested more of the me.
Okay.
The me. That's crazy, isn't it?
Wow. You guys are just going to keep taking years
By
off
the
your
way,
life.
are you
Off each other's
If you
lives.
see, listen to the way the show goes, Craig isn't far off. I don't know what your plans are for tonight. Your favorite player, the greatest player of all time, is in town tonight. Are you going to go check him out?
I am not going to the game tonight. Anthony, are you going to
Check
the
out
game
our
tonight?
GOAT. It's my GOAT.
Sadly, I have still not seen LeBron James, and tonight
What?
that will not change.
I've seen LeBron play in person.
I
before.
haven't.
They're also. Are we sure he's playing? He's not. It's a Sega Bob.
He's
It's a
a
Sega Bob
game time
back-to-back.
decision, but I
Second
don't think
game of back-to-back.
he's playing.
Bob is where did you get Sega Bob?
That's
from?
been
Why
on.
did you
That's
just-
been on the NBA
just
internet forever.
casually.
Second game of back-to-back.
You never heard of that, bro?
Now I forgot this is basketball 101 over on this side from 4 to 7.
Yeah, it's not 101. You put some more respect on our name. It's a
It's
graduate
like a
level course.
210, 400.
Anyway, Lynnell will be back tomorrow, yelling at Chris Russell. We'll be back in 5 minutes on the Hoffman Show. Don't go anywhere.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.